Us here on this broadcast. We are shifting focus now to the other big debate that we're having here, and that is a free run that seems to be given to pro-Khalistan sympathizers in Australia.
Ever since Sikhs for Justice announced this so-called referendum, we have been drawing the attention of the Australian authorities to the potential for violence and for sowing disharmony.
Now, after Canada and United Kingdom, pro-Khalistani propaganda machine seems to have shifted focus to Australia. In Melbourne yesterday, Indian students who were carrying the tricolour were attacked mercilessly by pro-Khalistani elements. Remember, yesterday was a day when a Sikh for Justice fueled referendum was being held in Melbourne. An organisation that is banned in India is desperately holding a completely illegal, non-binding referendum in Australia after it made similar such attempts across Canada. Several were left injured in that attack, which saw men using swords and wooden sticks with impunity in public spaces. Now, the Indian High Commissioner to Australia met with the Premier of Victoria and discussed this very growing threat from the extremist Khalistani groups. But is there a go-slow by the Australian authorities to take action and set an example? Now, the Hindu population in Australia stands at over 600,000 as per the 2021 census. Is that not a large enough community for Australia to pay heed to? Is the Indian community a victim of systems apathy and ignorance in Australia? And are Khalistan backers and propagandists getting a free run? Now, like me, many are asking that question, and here's why. Let me tell you that in 3 weeks, we've seen at least 4 different attacks that have taken place, beginning with the attack on a temple, which was the Bap Swaminarayan temple in Mill Park on the 12th of January. 4 days later, on the 16th of January, we saw an attack on another temple. This time, it was the Sri Shiva Vishnu temple in Melbourne itself on the outskirts. On Jan 23rd, the famous ISKCON temple came under attack. We saw pro-Khalistan graffiti that was on the walls of that particular temple. This happened in Albert Park in Melbourne. And yesterday, we saw a complete drama unfold there, ruckus and violence on the streets of Melbourne in Fed Square, where Indians were attacked with swords and wooden sticks. Now, this attack in Melbourne was not out of the blue. There were many warning signs that went unseen, cries for help that went unheard, and inaction in the 3 cases of vandalism of temples that perhaps emboldened these extremist elements. Hindu groups in Australia have now confirmed to us this sequence of events and how exactly they've been flagging all of this off to the Australian authorities. Now, these are images of on a poster of 2 of those who were executed for Indira Gandhi's murder, for her assassination. This is a poster that came up in Melbourne across social media, was pasted in public places as well. There was a car rally that called for a referendum for Khalistan. This happened around the same time the second temple was vandalized. That happened right after this car rally was held by pro-Khalistani sympathizers. Then there was another poster that came up in which you had Bindranwale calling for a separate state ahead of the referendum that was held again yesterday. There were several threats that were made on social media as well by pro-Khalistani sympathizers to the diaspora there. All of this has been happening, gaining momentum, especially in the last couple of weeks in Australia. All of this has happened. There were letters that have been written to the police, to the authorities in Australia. Unfortunately, nothing seems to have done, which is why we saw the kind of scenes yesterday at Fed Square. So the big question we're asking here on Plain Speak is that even as we see this Khalistan propaganda spread in Australia, is there no political will to rein in this anti-India narrative? RP Singh of the BJP joins us on this broadcast, senior fellow of the ORF, Sushant Rein also with me. But I want to ask my first question to G. Parthasarthi, who was also a former ambassador to Australia and knows the country, the kind of inner workings there as well. And Mr. Parthasarthi, we've seen the Indian High Commission, there are envoys repeatedly tell us that we have raised the issue with the counterparts there. Why then do you think nothing seems to change?
Look, normally from the time I've been there, the Sikh community has been ideal citizens of India, ideal representatives of India. Things have been changing with the passage of time. And to my mind, I think there is a substantial sort of infiltration of a Sikh community from Canada, which is the haven of terrorists. Now, with regard to what has happened here, my own hunch is they are being incited by the Khalistani terrorists from Canada, from the Sikh community, though there could be now, with passage of time, many more who have entered. So first, the question of identity. Most important, I think, there should be a very candid exchange with the Australians. They will take the view that this was unless they break the peace or, have some violence, the police can't intervene. My view is that is the view they will take. But the most important thing, therefore, now becomes dealing with this diplomatically and politically. I think Australians should be left in no doubt that there will be a price paid if they don't fall in line and stop this, because it is in effect moves to incite violence in India. I would also suggest that the need to keep a very close eye or restrict the entry of Khalistanis from Canada. They are the people who incite, and they are the people who are organized for this, and they have the money. Australia, as I said, my understanding of the Sikh population there is about 210,000, but 91,000 live in Melbourne. The Sikh communities association with Melbourne goes back a long time, though numbers are increasing in Sydney also. So it is going to be a tough diplomatic exercise because these people will be acting ostensibly peacefully. The others can't intervene. So unless they preach violence, and in this case, people from the other side protesting, the other Canadian Indians, including Sikhs, have protested against this. They have been beaten up by these gundas there. So I think it's up to the High Commission now, and we have also a consulate there, an honorary consul earlier, perhaps a consul general now, to take this up continuously. It's important in Australia that these things the state governments act on, federal government passes it on, but once instructions come from Canberra.
Yes.
And my own dealing with the Australians means, they'll take it easy. I think we have ways of impressing.
Sure, and that's really the worry. So we perhaps need to, pile on that pressure. And RP Singh, I would like...
Absolutely.
Yes, and RP Singh, perhaps that's something that we would like to see both from the diaspora side as well as the people here in the country. That, yes, we have seen our representatives there in Australia raise the issue with their counterparts, but perhaps it's time that New Delhi tightens the screws.
Yes, it should. That needs to be done urgently.
Yes.
And
RP
you
Singh,
should
go
leave
ahead.
them in no doubt.
Yes. Yes, RP Singh, go
otherwise
ahead.
The Australians...
I'll get you in, Mr. Parthasarathy. I need to get in the other panelists as well. RP Singh, go ahead, please.
Well, I 100% go by what Mr. Parthasarathy is saying, that the screws need to be tightened, and the message has to be very clear that, yes, we can't take this anymore, and then this is happening ongoingly and quite often. This is the fourth time which has happened in last month and a half. Earlier, 3 temples were vandalized, and now public place. When I say public place, land, some place owned by the government was given for referendum. In spite of there was protest by the other organizations that you can lease or give the space for referendum. And then Australian government has to understand that if they keep snakes in their backyard, tomorrow they will come back to them only. I mean, it's not that they are going to harm us only, but they are going to harm Australians also. So, and also that these people are only doing it for a media grab. They're just doing it because they want to highlight the issue in the media. On ground in India or in Punjab, they have no ground as such. I mean, I don't see any support they have in India.
Sure.
But yes, it is a bad publicity. It's only also, and then it radicalizes the youth abroad. And then when they connect to the youth in India, they further try to pass on that message here also. So we are hopeful that the Australian government will check this and ensure that this doesn't happen again. And also the way the Indians carrying the national flag were beaten, and then I've been told 5 of them have been seriously injured and hospitalized also. So that also has to be taken care, and the due action against whoever were involved in the violence should be checked.
Sure. Sure, and a message needs to be sent, Sushant Sareen. That's more important because we've had the High Commissioner here in India condemn it. Statements have been issued after the vandalism of these temples as well. But that's all that we have really seen. It's just statements and condemnation. Nothing in terms of action, because no arrests have been made as far as the anti-India or anti-Hindu graffiti that was seen in either of those 3 temples.
Yeah, and that's precisely what the problem is, isn't it? You see, in the case, I agree with what Ambassador Parthasarathi is saying, that, the Australians and rest of the West have their own, political system. And if there's a peaceful protest or a peaceful activity, they can't really interfere in it. But this was not peaceful. This was clearly a violent, action by the Khalistanis, who incidentally give the Sikh community a very bad name. In fact, they're spoiling the image of the Sikhs around the world to a point where I fear that if this carries on, entry for Sikhs will be banned in many of these countries, or they will not be given visas to enter many countries because of law and order issues. But that's something which the community has to take up. But clearly, I think the Australians have been remiss. I can understand that happening in Canada, where you have, Khalistanis in the cabinet of Justin Trudeau, but this kind of a thing happening in Australia is a little surprising, and I must say disappointing. And I don't think we should soft pedal this issue. We should soft pedal this issue because people of Indian diaspora, their lives and their liberty is in danger in these kind of places. And I think we need to take it up strongly. And I suspect that we haven't taken it up as strongly as we should have. But having said that, I must also say that I think the government of India is living in denial. I say this with all caution, because for example, that this kind of stuff is happening in many of these countries. The people who are behind this, many of the people who are the so-called stormtroopers of the Khalistanis, are guys who have immigrated from India. They still have properties and families in India, right? Number one. Number two, many of these fellows who are even citizens of Australia have been given OCI cards. What prevents the Indian authorities to photograph all these fellows, have a database ready, and cancel all their OCI cards? Why has the government of India not brought back the blacklist? See, when the blacklists were removed, there was a good reason for it. You were reaching out.
Yes.
But clearly, just like what has happened with the Pakistanis on TTP, that is happening with us on Khalistanis. We gave them a long rope and we are hanging ourselves in it. So we need to bring back the backlist. We need to scrap the OCI cards, and we need to have some system of, catching these fellows or at least penalizing them by, impounding their properties out here.
Sure.
By taking action against them, making it very expensive for these guys.
And that perhaps would be India leading by example, and then we can perhaps...
What we hear from Sardar R.P. Singh is that, but there is some noise happening. Even in Punjab, we are in denial. Under the Aam Aadmi Party government, things have gone from bad to worse. It was bad under the Congress government. It's even gone from bad to worse. And we are living in denial. I've got a Khalistani fellow who has been elected to the Parliament of India, and we are still in denial. So I think the sooner the government of India gets out of this denial, the safer we will be. Otherwise, I have been saying this and I will say it again, we are going back to the late 80s and the early 90s.
Absolutely, and India perhaps should be leading by example, and that is how we can tighten the screws on other governments, because these kind of referendums that are being held, G. Parthasarathy, have been held in UK and Canada as well. They're illegal, they're non-binding. It's held by an organization that is banned here in India. And the Indian Australian population of the diaspora is not a scarce population in Australia. They account for about 3%, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, no, 91,000 is the official Australian figure. But with the large numbers 210,000, with 91,000, as I said, in and around Melbourne up there, so across the province. So I think a couple of things that I go along with what Sushant says with regard to what we need to do in India. I think we should hold up their OCI cards if anyone has it, put them on a blacklist for travel to India, and with regard to the we would also, I think, have to tell the Australians to keep a close watch on the Pakistani High Commission there, because the Pakistanis do have a known record of fiddling with Khalistanis across the world.
Yes.
And that sort of action, but I think at a certain stage, diplomatically at a high level, it has to be taken up with the Australians. I know Australians sometimes tend to become over moralistic. I mean, lecturing to others on their nuclear weapons programs.
Yes.
But that we now have a very good relationship. We are members both of the Quad. And I think it would be best if it is taken up at the highest level.
Absolutely, and that perhaps is the need of the hour, so that we don't see any more such attacks in the future. We've already seen 4 in 3 weeks, and that's really where that should really where our threshold should be for now, New Delhi to perhaps intervene. I'm running out of time, but I thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us here on this broadcast with your perspective. We are slipping into a quick break here on this edition.